Hello, everybody. I'd like to talk a little bit this morning about, is it possible to think differently with respect to being a business advisor? There's probably quite a lot of people in the audience who have some title and then business advisor after it. And certainly at the University of Malta and where I was previously at the University of Oxford, we have a great number of people involved with incubators, all of whom require business advice. And as far as I know, there isn't a single qualification or certificate or program that qualifies anybody to become a business advisor. Very often, incubators are working with mentors who give their time free, which is fantastic. And those mentors give their time free because they come from a position of experience. They run businesses. As Reinhold was saying, they may have experience in failure and success and can be encouraging, and that's a tremendous thing that a mentor can do. But where does this concept of business advisor come from? Now, as you can probably see here from my qualifications, I didn't come into business by a direct route. In fact, my background is medical research, and I began to start thinking about, could we try to think about a medical model? Imagine if you go to your family doctor. Say that you're feeling unwell tonight and you go and see her, and she'll maybe spend 10 minutes with you, in which time she'll almost certainly ask a series of questions and come to a conclusion about what the problem might be. She'll make a recommendation about whether this is serious, what you need to do, and possibly also give you some medication. And one of the things that she will have done is learned a great deal about the subject she's thinking about, the human body, the anatomy. And yet, it's not really an approach that very often is taken when thinking about being a business advisor. So it set us thinking, could we learn anything from this? What can we do? And we set up some rules about how we'd approach business advice. First of all, it had to be straightforward. You had to do it quickly. Nothing that you wrote could be more than one page. It had to be something that people who are busy, entrepreneurial, wanting to make progress can get on with. But the getting on with bit is the thing that worried us, because of late and in recent years, there have been some tremendous, very, very popular and very successful concepts about how to help people get into business. Probably the most successful one in terms of helping people understand business and how they might start it, of course, is the business canvas model, but then other things have developed from that, the concept of lean thinking and the concept of minimum viable products and so forth. So very often, there's an enormous amount of help getting people to start, and then there could be a lack of quality or inconsistent quality about the service and support they get from mentoring and so forth after that. Of course, it's possible to pay for advice from accountants and lawyers, very good advice in their particular area. To be candid, an accountant may not necessarily know much about manufacturing. A lawyer may not necessarily know much about promotion. But nevertheless, those are the people that one would naturally turn to. But startups very often don't have a great deal of cash, and so they may not be able to afford that. So we've spent about 20 years thinking how we can do research to find out what are the questions that people need to ask. And so over that period of time, we've been working with, it's very close now to 5,000 businesses from a range of different countries who have in different areas raised a great deal of money. Some of those businesses are run by disabled people who work from home, from their bedroom, because they have to and because they can. The internet makes that possible. Some are researchers from my old university, at the University of Oxford, who may be a world expert in cancer with a new cure for cancer and needs to raise several million on day one just to get going. So we've looked across a real broad range of different business types. We spoke to them in detail. In fact, 2,500 interviews undertaken by 10 MBA graduates that work for us. And then we've done another 1,000 interviews with professional advisors, people who are active in this area of new business, not family lawyers and so forth, obviously, but actually actively involved in business. And we wanted to know from them, what are the questions that you're always asked? And then we wanted to know, what are the questions that you're amazed you're never asked because people don't know they don't know? And so how can we begin to put together a picture of those things that mattered? And we looked at how we could trial this and test it and work with a number of new business startups in a range of countries, as you can see there. So where do we start with all of this? Well, I think we start where pretty much everybody would want to start these days, thinking of what is the value proposition. What are you actually thinking about in your business? What's the problem? What's the solution? And what are the benefits? Not the features, but the benefits. So that's the starting point of this model that's evolved from all of this work. And then around that, it's not necessarily that popular, it's not necessarily part of the modern vogue, but we actually quite like a plan of some sort. And we break that down into forecasts, and there are 4 of them. Product, what actually are you going to sell? And let's be honest, there are only 2 things in the world you can sell, a product or a service. Smart businesses sell both, but what are you going to sell? And then from that, is there a market? And that's a pretty obvious one. Do people want to buy this? Can you sell it at a price where you can make a profit? And then what is going to be your business model to wrap around that? And essentially, how much money do you need? So very, very simple, straightforward things. Forecast first and then strategies second. And the strategies sit in between them. So as you can see, between the bottom middle one, the product forecast, and the left-hand side middle one, the market forecast, the commercial strategy is how you intend to get your product to the market that you can see. And so that's often the way that people will put something together and think about a pre-startup model. There's no components of management yet into that, built into it, or control, but that is often enough to get going. And so we then began to think about, how do we think about management? And we put management as a kind of axis, up, down, left and right, into this model. The top one, as you can see, is simply called milestone management. Coming down in a clockwise way, accounting management, and then innovation management and sales management. And we found from all of the research that those were the important things that people had to manage. Moving on, we recognized that there's then interactions of this model with the outside world. And this is starting to get rather busy. I'm sorry about that. But you can see down the bottom, for example, 16 business intelligence, that's information coming into the business, and then 17 business marketing, information going out of the business. We've got management now, we've got interaction, still no control. So control becomes the cornerstone of this model very simply. And for us, what we recognize that very often owner's control, top left, is where things start. Hey, this is my company, I'm going to do what I want to do. That quickly then moves to the top right, financial control. I may want to do that, but can I afford it? And then that often moves around again in the clockwise way to, as you can see, bottom right, production control. Can we actually make this? But ultimately, as we've heard, I think, from 2 speakers already, if we're thinking like Apple, it's about brand control. That's the ultimate part of control, is for the business to be controlled by what people want you to make, what they want to buy from you. And that's the business anatomy that we have sort of developed in this simple model. Now, behind that, and what makes it powerful as both an expert system and now an artificial intelligence system, is that the overall framework, you can see there are 5 colors there. The green building blocks, that's the old-fashioned manufacturing department. On the left, the orangey yellow color, that's the old-fashioned commercial department. Top left, old-fashioned management, top right, old-fashioned finance. So you can see how the old-fashioned way of thinking still maps onto this. But what we've done then is to look at within each of those, to put, as you can see, a number of different boxes together. And there are 25, 5 times 5, that we call functions, but we've looked beyond that. So within each of those functions, the research has told us what are the 5 key areas that one has to think about. And then that gives us those features being 125. And within each of those, what key questions do we need to ask for each of those features? So the focus there gives us 625. And if we have 5 ways of addressing that, it gives us 3,125. Things that we can do to help a business in an incubator when they're starting up. Roughly the same amount of tablets that a physician could prescribe. Not surprisingly, it's that kind of model. And what we use and what we've learned now is that for the incubator model for getting going, 45 features in the 9 inner core functions are what matter, accelerator 125, and then the catapult model 625, lots of things that we can do there, but we don't ask every question. In just the same way that your family doctor doesn't ask every question that she may know in order to find out what's wrong with you. So you goal down this expert system, the algorithm. It's then allowed us to do very simple things like this. We can, in a startup incubator, have a very simple assessment for somebody who comes in. Where do you think you are on this scale? And if we go back to the 5 by 5, what you can see is there are 25 different boxes. There's a score of 0 to 4 on all of those, so we get a score percentage of up to 100. But it becomes much more powerful than that if we look to put together all the ones coloured the same, which are the different old-fashioned departments. Or we look at the control scores, or the management scores, or the strategy scores, and so on. So we can begin to pull all of these things together to take a very simple basic assessment and look to see where this person is going to need help. This is the catapult assessment, which I don't really expect you can read from the back there, it doesn't matter. For each of those 25 building blocks, there are 5 different categories of areas of interest, and then 5 key questions. And so we can come up with a very, very comprehensive, specific score to understand where there are problems, what needs to happen, and what we can do. Beloved of the investors I work with. That's what they pay us to do, to give us an assessment of a business opportunity using this sort of system. We found, it turns out, that this is very good a way of helping people to understand business and how to teach it. The way we've designed it is that there are 2 by 2 squares, and you can have, therefore, any of those on any location, and it always consists of having 1 strategy square within it. And as you can see here, on this particular one, you can see that we're looking at the inner 9, and the strategy square in that is commercial strategy. And it's pretty obvious from the product forecast to the market forecast, your commercial strategy is how you're going to do that. Makes sense. It can be very different, though, if you flip that so that you can see that now we've just moved that 2 by 2, and now we're looking at business intelligence, innovation management, informing the way we're thinking about strategy. So it's a very simple way of helping people new to business understand about how to think about things. This is proving quite powerful. Taking it a stage further, and going back to the Apple study we've already heard twice, if we think about when Steve Jobs returned to Apple, basically the 3 by 2 box is what we call a process with this model that he was looking at was pretty horrific. Apple had deteriorated to the point where they made what they were able to make. And so that was driven by production control. What he did, which was quite brave, but gave his colleagues at the time serious diarrhea, was to move that box, that process, to the left by 1 square. So now we don't have any control boxes. Now we're looking to see what information is coming in terms of business intelligence. Let that inform what we want. In other words, begin to think about making what people are asking for. And ultimately, he moved it right across to the left so that it's now entirely controlled by brand. And for Apple, that's a very powerful brand, probably one of the most powerful brands in the entire world, as I'm sure most people would agree. So we found out that this system can help us understand, mentor, teach, but we can do it rapidly. If we can't mentor rapidly, your mentees don't come back. So we have to do this rapidly and quickly and make it work, and this is proving very, very, very successful. Does it actually make a difference? Here are the 5-year follow-up data from those hundreds and hundreds of businesses that we've looked at. Yes, by providing help using this system, we can take business sustainability up a notch. These are data from the UK, from Barclays. If you look at the lower one, the orangey line, those are sustainability data over 5 years, and it's pretty desperate. In the UK, only around 30% of businesses are left. Those who followed ours, the blue line, it's more like 70%. So without making a huge impact in terms of taking time to mentor, if we now know the right questions and the right answers to give, then we can make a difference. And so that's the approach that we now take at Takeoff, part of the university. And I see that my time's up, so I'll simply say thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.